is our God, and all will see how great is our God. How great is our God. Sing with me, how great is our God, and all will see how great is our God. He wraps himself in light, and darkness tries to hide. They tremble at his voice. They tremble at his voice. How great is our God. Sing with me, how great is our God, and I will see how great is our God. Name above all names, He is worthy of our praise, and my heart will sing, how great is our God. How great is our God. Sing with me, how great is our God, and I will see how great is our God.
Yes, Lord. How great are you, Lord? How great is your name? How great is your power, Lord? If there's nothing to compare, Lord, uncomparable, Lord. Thank you. Thank you, Lord, for your love and mercy. Thank you for your goodness and your favor upon us, Lord. Thank you. Teach us and lead us, Lord. Teach us and show us the way, Father. We need your help and guidance in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. Speak over us. Amen. Amen. You guys may take your seats.
Small. All right, let's see. How are you guys doing today? Or this morning, or afternoon? One person's doing good. I guess everybody else is having a bad day. Yeah, I guess it's been a minute since I've been up here, and even come on Sundays usually because of work. You know, that's what happens when you're born poor. So yeah, it's been a while, and then today too. I was gonna work in the morning, and then my brother's like, hey, like I think it's he's got to do some things in the afternoon, so he's all like, oh, you go in the I'll go. I was like, oh well, thanks for the short notice, because I was like, I haven't even planned anything or prepared anything to say or anything like that, but he's all like, oh well, I mean, yeah, you'll figure it out. And that's always like a thing. It's always a thing too. Like you gotta have to kind of always, especially here as you're growing up or growing up in the church and stuff. It's always easy to to be here and not really, when you listen and stuff, and then you sometimes don't really remember a few things. But every time, like, I'm here and listening and stuff, we're not just here, but like in other churches, I always have that in the back of my head that one day out of nowhere, my dad might need me to talk or my brother to talk. So I always have to kind of keep that in the back of my head when we go to services and stuff, and try to always remember something or try to have something memorized in a way, or a lesson, a lecture, or something, because for that reason that me and my brother in that position where if my dad needs us to send us somewhere, or if we go on a trip somewhere, like with Brother Hannes or somewhere, and because last time we went, he wanted us to talk for a bit. All those little things, it's always good for us to have something already in the back of our heads, just because we're kind of in that position. But I mean, I think it also helps us because it helps us to pay attention more, be a little bit more alert, be more perspicacious about the stuff around us and when we're listening. And so I think it's always and it always happens to me too when it's spontaneous, where I'm not really planned about it, and they're like, "Hey, you're gonna talk to them." Like, "Oh man!" So I've noticed that it's helped me more in the long run, paying attention and doing more stuff like that. For like today, for example, now I wasn't even aware that I was gonna talk, but now I'm here, so now it's kind of like all the lectures and stuff like that I've listened to and are coming to mind to see which one or what do I say, and see what blends in with when my dad spoke earlier. So try to find all those little things. Usually when one of us talks, like if my dad had talked earlier, I always try to kind of maybe like blend it in a bit to not completely what's it called, like go off the rails kind of thing, and try so we can all, especially because it was in Spanish, and also try to make sure we keep the, because I was a little bit change the subject, but with the Spanish thing, I went on a trip not too long ago, and I got on an Uber, and the guy that was the driver, he was just talking in Spanish, and I was just talking to him in Spanish, and he was asking me like, "Hey, are you from Mex?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, my parents are from Mex, but I was born here in the U.S." He's like, "Oh, so you were not born in Mexico?" I was like, "No, I wasn't born there." He's like, "Oh, because your Spanish is well." And I'm like, "No, I don't think my Spanish is well. I mean, there's a lot that I don't know in Spanish that, compared to other people." He's like, "No, but like for your age and stuff, there's like a lot of people, young people don't really talk Spanish or know how to really read it and stuff like that." And I was kind of like, "Well, yeah, no, that is true. I have realized that a lot of people. I have a friend who doesn't speak. He speaks Spanish, but it's trash. Like it's very like don't even speak Spanish, man. Like just don't." And his parents only speak Spanish. So I always make fun of him, like, "How do you communicate with them?" He's like, "Well, I talk in Spanish." I'm like, "Yeah, but your Spanish is garbage. Like, I can barely understand you when you talk." So he's like, "Oh, I just," or hands. I'm like, "Dude, like, I wouldn't be able to, like, live like that, like, not be able to communicate properly and stuff." But he said that, they never really, when he was growing up, his parents were always working. So, he never really interacted in Spanish and stuff. But I mean, it's kind of funny seeing how sometimes when it's like dad calls him and he's on the phone, I was just kind of like laughing because it's very it sounds bad, like dude, like. So coming back to what the guy was telling me about the whole Spanish thing is that well, we grew up here in church and pretty much in a Spanish household, so we pick up the Spanish first, and then we come to church, we listen in Spanish and stuff. But it's funny how some people, even within the church and stuff, that grew up in Spanish, don't really know how to properly speak Spanish or understand some of the vocabulary, like in the Bible and stuff like that. And so I think that's maybe also the good reason why we have this time right here in English, so like that people can understand a little bit better, and especially some of the vocabulary that sometimes my dad mentions that in Spanish is a little bit. If you don't hear it in the household, you're not really going to understand it. So I think it's always good that we have this time for, especially the young people, that it'll be easier for them to understand. And then we also, I try to use trying to use crazy language or anything like that. So terminology that's all crazy, something for us right here. Keep it within what do you call it, the age group and stuff. Now we had like some lawyers and doctors, and I would have to be a little bit more advanced in my English. But so kind of what I wanted to, because my dad was talking about how, I mean, how many of you guys have heard about the earthquake that happened in Turkey and Syria and in that part? I'm pretty sure you guys have heard about that, right? I think it was on Tuesday night, right? Wednesday when it happened, right? So I remember on Tuesday night, like when I got off work and then I got home, it was pretty late, and I remember I saw on my phone that there was an earthquake, and I was like, oh man, and it was like 1 something in the morning, and I was kind of like glancing through it, and I saw that there wasn't as much information out yet, and I had seen that there was like about 30 people had died, and I was like, oh man, 30 people, like that's a lot. And then I went to sleep, and then when I woke up and I looked it up again, then I started seeing that there was now 2,000, and I was like, oh man. So then throughout the time, I've noticed that the death toll was adding and adding and adding, and then I started seeing more like information on how the magnitude of the earthquake and the location, and there's some videos out there about the buildings collapsing and stuff like that. And I remember I showed my mom, and my mom was pretty surprised, but she was trying to say how, like, is there a way you can kind of like predict that and stuff? And I was like, well, no, that's the thing with earthquakes, that there hasn't really been a tool that detects like when an earthquake is going to happen. I mean, yeah, there's some ideas and predictions that, but like exactly like, there's going to be an earthquake happening within the next few hours. Like there's nothing like that. So it's really hard to predict earthquakes. And, here in California, we're in the area where earthquakes happen, the San Andreas Fault and stuff like that. So, seeing those things that were going on over there, then I was thinking about here with us. I mean, we're here in this area, it's more suburban. We don't really live in tall apartment complexes or nothing like that. So, I mean, if there's an earthquake, it's not as it's easier for us to, in a way, get away and hide, especially not compared to like in Turkey and stuff, where they live in high complexes where it's like 10 stories or more. And I mean, if you're on the 10th story and there's an earthquake, I mean, like, what do you do? You're like, it's very. I try to imagine that situation that those people were in, like, because it happens spontaneous. It's not like there was a warning and stuff, so you could just be there sleeping and you just feel everything shake, and then the building collapses and that's it. So there's no real warning or anything like that. And that was imagining it like on our end, since here in California we're considered an earthquake area state. I was thinking of what would happen to us, how would we react and things like that. Even though for us it might be maybe in a sense a little bit easier to not get buried in rubble and stuff like that. But of course, there's always many different things that could happen, and try to put ourselves in that position of like, what would we do? How would we react? And like how my dad was saying earlier today, that a lot of times we see that in the way we react and stuff like that. Sometimes we're just like, oh, what's happening on the other side of the world, so it don't bother us. And it's a lot of the stuff that he was saying about how some people say like, oh, as long as it doesn't happen to me, it's fine. And I've actually heard that a lot from other people, and not just like for in this instance regarding the earthquake, but like for other many different things. I've heard that a lot of people say that, like, oh, as long as it doesn't happen to me, it's not my problem, or things like that. And yeah, in a sense, of course it's not affecting you in any way. But like my dad was saying, that like how us as Christians, we need to find the best way to feel compassion for those people that's going on, that the stuff that is going on to those people on the other side of the world, even though it might not happening to us. And at the same time, some of the people we might not even know, or they might be from different religious groups and stuff. But I mean, I was thinking in my head, I'm pretty sure within those few thousands that have passed away, there was some brothers in there, some Christian brothers with their families and stuff like that, kind of like us. So don't just see them as like, oh, people that are from Turkey and Syria, different country. But I see it as I'm pretty sure there's brothers over there that live in those areas, that were living in those cities that got ruined. So also as Christians, I think we gotta also think about it that way, not just as people that were there, but also like I'm pretty sure there was some Christian brothers and sisters that were in that catastrophe. So I also try to see it that way and make sure we have compassion for them. And so based on all that, I was trying to think of what we could I could like share with you guys and stuff. And then one of the things that kind of came to mind was like how we are here, and how I'm pretty sure I've explained to you guys before how I was working at the school for a bit, and how I noticed a lot of the kids, how they are and stuff like that, and how a lot of the things that I saw was because of the parents, how they how my dad was saying earlier that sometimes our parents don't really give us because they're working, or I'm not saying like they're doing something bad, but like they're working, they're preoccupied, and sometimes when we're at a young age, we don't really understand that. We don't understand how maybe they're stressing over some bills or some late fees or something like that, and we don't really look into that or consider that because when we're young, we're not thinking about any of that, and sometimes I think that puts us in a position to kind of maybe sometimes feel some sort of like dislike towards our parents, because sometimes maybe they're you might say they don't understand us and stuff like that, but once now that I've gotten older, I've seen how like there's a lot of issues and problems and stuff like financially. Mostly it's like a lot of now more like in other parts of the world where it's more like physical, like trying to find food or things like that, more dramatic. Right here we have a lot of food and stuff, but more systematic in the sense of like bills and stuff like that. Trying to pay back your credit, and if I don't pay back this, they're gonna take away the car, or if I don't pay this, I'm gonna get evicted. So more like systematic problems. Well, there's a very popular saying, first world problems. I don't know if you guys have heard of that, because those problems are really different to other problems. But the thing that I've noticed more about these type of like issues that we have here, that it does affect us more in our, like you can say in a psychological sense, the mentality, the way we are perceptive of things, and you can see that within the adults, but with when you're younger, it's really different. I mean, even for like Leo and Priscilla, who are still a little bit younger than I am, and Chalino, who has seen how, because when I was in like middle school, there was no real phones yet. There was the flip phones, but there was nothing really to. When I was in high school, then a little bit more of the phones started coming out, but it wasn't very popular. And then that's one thing that I've told some friends from school that I've noticed how back in the day, I don't think you guys ever experienced that. But back in the day when we used to have like flip phones and stuff like that, like let's say if Chalino wanted to use it, I'll be like, oh yeah, you can use it, here, take it. And he would use it. There was no sort of like, oh no, hold on, let me hide what I have on my phone or stuff like that. That wasn't really a thing back then. And because sometimes I remember I would have to like, oh, can I use it to call, or can I use it to send a message to like my brother or something like that? Oh yeah, here. And then sometimes I'd be like, oh yeah, just give it to me after school. So there was no sense of like hiding or privacy, like in a bad way. Everything was with the phones. Everything was very like open. There was not much of like hiding, like because now that's what it is, hiding. You want to be like someone wants to use your phone, you're kind of looking like, don't swipe left, don't swipe left. You're like, oh, is he gonna check on this? Like you get worried or scared. But back then that because of the phones, they didn't have as many apps and stuff like that. I kind of understand that part, but I've noticed that how it's changed now. Because now, yeah, you can let someone use it for something, but sometimes they're kind of like looking to see what you're navigating, or if you're showing them a picture, it's very famous when you're like kind of like don't swipe this way, little things like that. But like back then, it wasn't really a thing with the phones. It wasn't. I've noticed that you can share it around people, and it didn't really bother them, and how like that's compared to now, how like the phones and stuff like that, it's very they're completely different. Everybody back then, not that many people had phones. I think the only reason I started getting I got mine was because I was working with my uncle cutting the yards on the weekend, and that's the only reason why. And it was just like I didn't have no crazy. It was just for the texting. There was I couldn't call with it like, very limited. But now a lot of the young kids have phones and stuff, and then who knows what they navigate through. And going back to what I was just trying to say about how things are different with the adults and with the youngsters, and how we see how adults deal with different problems and we young people deal with different problems. And the reason why I was mentioning the phone thing is because how times have kind of changed in a sense. How we try to be a little bit more like private. I don't know if people have noticed, but some people don't really. I feel like because maybe I don't know. I don't want to say if it's because of the phone, but you reserve yourself a lot. So in a sense of you don't really like interacting with people or talking to people, because I've seen that a lot where like some young kids, instead of talking to maybe like some other young kids or maybe even asking some adults something or just having typical conversations, they just like put their face in their phone. And then if you guys have seen where like if you go, there's like funny memes that like, oh, go to the DMV but you don't know what to do, so you're just looking at the weather, like stuff like that. Or when you're like waiting in line for somewhere and you don't know what to do, you're just looking at, I don't know, like doing random stuff. Yeah, or just, I don't know. But instead of maybe like interacting or doing something, you just like use your phone as your safe space. Have your, like, because especially us that have kind of experience, but like you young people that maybe haven't gone to a new job or anything like that. When you go somewhere new, the first thing you do feel is, you feel kind of scared because you've never been in that place. You don't know how people are going to treat you. You don't know if people are going to talk to you. So, and when I used to go to like a new job, the first thing that I would do is I would try to interact with people just so I can kind of break the ice and I wouldn't feel uncomfortable or scared or anything like that. Even though like when you're there, you're kind of like, I don't want to say, I don't want to look dumb and stuff like that. But I feel like it's a great practice of just interacting with people and, and then not always using your phone as a safe space and hiding and stuff like that, but interacting with people. And of course, try to be also perceptive and see who you're going to talk to too. I mean, there's very different ways. If you see this person's this way, maybe try to avoid. You can always say hi and stuff, but try to avoid them. But if you see this person that's a little bit more honest and stuff like that, you can always interact. But like just break out of that like shell, I guess. And like I said, how back then with the phones, we wouldn't really use them as that. We wouldn't use them as our safe or like privacy. We would it wasn't a thing to really do that. So I figured like back in the day, it was a little bit easier to talk to people. Or if you needed to get information, instead of just looking it up, you had to go and ask and stuff like that. If you went up to like for example, the DMV, you needed, I'm going to renew my license. Now you could do it over the phone. And back then when I was doing it, you couldn't do that. You had to go in person and ask and stuff like that. And I always had a couple friends. And that was the thing that was also pretty interesting about back then. Like there was always a friend like, oh, I'm going to go get a job application, but I don't want to go by myself. So, you would go with like a group of 3 or 4, go get the job application. But it was interacting. You were interacting with different people. You were interacting with whatever place you were going to get that information. So you were just more open to interaction. And something that I've noticed nowadays is that a lot of the youngsters are not really interactive with people or with stuff like that. And I think that's something that would really help us, especially like if that's just saying like in our daily lives. But like, let's say if you want to do something more like spiritual, now that's when I think that those practices help, because how are you going to talk to other people about God when you can't even talk to other people about like a job application? Like how are you going to talk to or share maybe your experience or maybe at a camp or something with someone that's like struggling with something when you even yourself, you can't even go and ask for information, So I think we put ourselves like in a cage in a sense where you can't really, if you can't even help yourself on getting information or interacting, how are you going to do that when it comes to helping other people, talking about like your faith or anything like that? If you're too scared to even help yourself, how are you going to help others? And I think that's something that I think we should like all work on. I want to get to. Let me start somewhere. Let's see. I don't know. I'm trying to see if I should start from like, or should I just, like slowly go up there? Oh, yeah, perfect. Let's go to, let's see. Like, since, I came, I didn't, but I got some screenshots of a verse, so I'm gonna read it to you. So it's so do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you, and I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. So like on this verse, we can see how it says, do not fear, because even for the smallest things, I feel like we all have different fears in a sense. Like for me, I'm not really scared of talking in public or public speaking. It's not really for me. I don't want to say it's whatever, but it doesn't bother me. But there's some people who can't do that, who can come up in the front and they can't talk in front of a group of people. I've seen it happen where I was taking speech class, and it was just very simple stuff that we would talk about in the class, nothing complicated. But there were some people who were really scared to go up in front of people and talk, even though it was just like 10 or 15 people, but they were just so scared. Some of them couldn't do it. They would go and talk to the teacher and be like, hey, I have stage fright. I can't really do this, and that's, in a sense, that's a fear, that's a fear. For me, like, it's not a fear, but like for some people, it's a fear. And we can always use different scenarios, but like in that sense, you can always, pray in a sense, talk to God and be like, hey, I'm really scared of, taking this class because I'm going to talk in front of people, but I need to take it because I wanted to fit my curriculum, even though it's like minor stuff like that. But, things like that, we can always ask God to help us. Once you get older, you get bigger problems. So then you ask God for other stuff. But like in that sense, in your situation, in that time frame, you can always ask God for just simple things like that. Even if it's going to get your first job application or stuff like that, or even during your interview, because there's even when I've seen when interviews, that's another fear too, is having that like getting interviewed. I don't know how many of you guys have gotten interviewed. So there's always some sense of fear that you're gonna say the wrong thing, or that maybe, you're not going to look presentable, or just there's always some, even that's not something crazy, but there's always some sort of small fear about it. And we can always pray to God, because he even says, for I am your God, I will strengthen you and help you. So you can always, pray to God before you go to the interview, or little small things like that are part of a daily life. Even if you're in school, maybe it's like a test or a presentation, even simple things like that, you can always, tell God to help you and give you strength. And I feel like sometimes, like I said, I never really had this issue, public speaking. So in school, when I would give out presentations, stuff like that, it would never bother me at all. Like, oh, yeah, I'll do it. But then I'm pretty sure you guys had groups, when you guys do group projects, you guys got to present yourself, the PowerPoint or whatever you guys did. And there's always some guy that doesn't want to do, or some girl that's like, no, I don't want to do it. Like, you do it. And then, there's always that little stuff like that, and sometimes it's something small like that, but sometimes it could be bigger, like I said, like an interview. And I have that one friend that, I'm talking bad about him. Nah, I'm not talking bad, but that one that doesn't really know how to speak Spanish. He's, I think he said that he went to this interview a while back, and the guy that was giving the interviews, he was only talking Spanish, and because his English wasn't that great, but since mostly, people from Los Empaques and stuff that were going, so for him, he was kind of like, oh, everyone speaks Spanish, so it wasn't a problem. But when my friend went, he said that the guy's like, oh, well, I don't really speak English that well. He was like, well, I don't really speak Spanish that well. So I was like, and then I told him, how did that interview go? He's like, dude, like, he's like, I was telling him stuff, but he didn't really understand me. And then he was trying to tell me things, and I couldn't understand him. So I'm like, so what happened? Well, I didn't get the job. Because he's all like, the guy was telling him, well, he literally understood. The guy was telling him, so if I give you directions, how are you going to understand? And he was like, oh, I don't know, I'll ask someone else. But, obviously that wasn't going to work out. It just wasn't going to work out. So I told him, well, at the end, what are you going to do or what? He was like, well, I just need to practice on my Spanish, I guess. And I'm all like, well, you probably should, because, especially in this area, it's very Spanish speaking. So if you're trying to get a job or interact with coworkers and stuff, most likely you're going to have a few Spanish speaking people. And yeah, it's a trait that you have to learn. But even like for him, it's funny, but it's kind of like, oh man, like, you know, you wish you would practice more your Spanish, or even when it comes to like an interview like that, like I said, you know, you feel a little scared and stuff like that. You know, it's always good to, even for simple stuff like that, it's always good to ask God for help. And then another verse that I want to read out to you guys, and that's one that's Psalms 55:22. I'm going to read it. It says, cast your burden on the Lord, and he will sustain you. He will never permit the righteous to be moved. So on this verse, I can kind of say that it touches on how you don't have to go through things alone. And when times are tough, instead, you know, turn to God and he will help you. And like it says here, you know, he will sustain you. So like for us adults, maybe it could be, maybe let me put myself in a position where I kind of showed this example to some people, but when I was working at the base, 2018, we were kind of not shorthanded, but it was not that many people. And the one in charge of me, he was like, "Hey, we need to move. We need to build these tents on this side, but we need someone to drive a truck, a flatbed." And then the flatbed had this big trailer, and the big trailer had this big forklift. And I've never done that. I've never driven a flatbed with a big trailer with a big forklift. Like, I've never done that. And when the guy showed up, he was like, all right, you do this, you do that, and then you drive the thing. And I was like, like, I've never driven it. Like, and I didn't say anything. I was like, well, I guess I'll do it. He's like, well, have you done it before? I was like, no. He said, well, you're going to learn today. And I was like, oh, man. Like, but it was kind of scary because, you know, I've never driven a big vehicle with, you know, and it's something when it's by itself, but when it's a long trailer and then it has like a big forklift on top, it's a whole nother level. You know, you can drive a big truck, but when you have all that stuff, you got to know when to turn. And it had you have your brakes on the truck, but then you also have the trailer brakes that are on the side, so you got to know when to use them both. And it's not complicated now because I did it, but when I first jumped in, I was like, and then there was nobody going to be with me. I was going to drive it by myself. And I was kind of like, oh man, like, what am I going to do? Like, I'm scared because what if I crash? Because we were like in the mountains too. It wasn't like, oh, we're going on the highway. No, it was in the mountains. No, there was a bunch of like Humvees and stuff like that. So I was scared. I was like, man, how am I gonna get through this? You know, in my head, I was like, oh man, Lord, please don't make me die here, man. You know, because I was by myself. I didn't know anything. You know, the guy's like, all right, well, you know, we'll drive it. Then I remember I was driving it like all like scared and stuff, and you know, it's just saying, you know, believe it or not, but when you're in like it's kind of like, you know, a situation like that where we're going down hills and the roads are very, very thin. And, you know, there was like Humvees and other cars passing by. So you got to make sure that when you turn, you know, you don't turn too short. Because if you turn too short, you'll hit the side of the mountain. And then if you turn too wide, then you'll hit the oncoming cars. So it's very, you got to be very, it's just cautious. And, you know, especially me. Because, I mean, if you go through training and stuff, all right, whatever. But I've never done that before. So for me, it was a very scary situation right there, knowing that I was gonna mess up. And then I was carrying all this equipment too, so it's like, what if I crash and this equipment gets destroyed, and all these things start popping up in your head. But, you know, thank God I was able to make it through. You know, we got to the other side, and, you know, and then on the way back I didn't have to drive it, so that was a relief right there. But like in that little small situation, you know, I was scared. I was worried that I was gonna maybe, you know, flip over. You know, when you put yourself in a difficult situation, we start imagining things that could happen to us bad. And it's funny how, like, most of the time, all the stuff the stuff that worries us is mostly just like our imagination. Like, it's the ones that is playing more with our heads. It's not even scenarios that could really happen. It could, but we invent them more in our minds, so it makes us more worried. It makes us more scared. Even for something simple as, let's say, we're going to do a school presentation. You know, you start worrying, oh, what if I stutter? Or what if I fall in front of everybody? You know, like, you start making all these little scenarios in your head, and then you start getting more worried and stuff like that. And for, like I said, something as small as that to something a little bit more bigger, you always have to find a way to, like, pray to God in a sense. You don't have to do no crazy prayer right there at that moment, but when you're driving or when you're walking up to the presentation or something, always God always hears our prayers. Using our mind, to pray inside our mind silently and stuff. And then another verse that I want to read is Psalms 94:19. And I'm just going to start reading it. It says, "Our hope is found in the Lord. He comforts and lifts our spirits. If we will run to him with our doubts, worries, and fears, if hope and cheer seemingly painfully unattainable, take heart. Because, Scripture tells us that his presence, and they're here for the taking." So on the part of the verse where it says, our hopes is found within the Lord, and he comforts and lifts our spirits. It's going back to what I'm saying is how, and depending on the scenario, we can always find strength in God and stuff. Now you can, all of you individually, you guys are living your lives. You guys are going to your classes, your schools. Everybody has a different teacher, different routine. So now I want you guys to imagine yourself in your daily routine and see what thing maybe gives you fear or doubt or anything, in your small, in your world that you can kind of say. Like, let's say, Leo goes to work in the night, So let's say he starts, maybe this night, try to be, hopefully I don't fall asleep on the job or stuff. Because these past weeks I've been doing grave, and, you do get sleepy, man. You really do. All right, I got this and stuff. And then sometimes, because it's happened to one of the guys at work where he fell asleep, and he didn't open up the gates and everything. And so, that's, in a sense, that's a small fear of, like, oh man, hopefully I don't fall asleep, because then if I fall asleep, I can get fired. And so that's a sense, it's a small fear. It's a worry, you're worrying about a situation. So I want you guys to, picture yourself in your daily life, daily routine. Maybe it's driving up to work, there's always traffic. There's always, especially with this bridge, man, like, the ones that drive, we know that this bridge has been built since the Chinese dynasty. I think Genghis Khan was part of it or something, because, man, that thing is not being finished. I think Rome would have been built faster than that bridge, for sure. Not even Queen Elizabeth could outlive the bridge. She went through so many wars and stuff, but not the bridge, and she couldn't see the end of that. There's so many... because I've encountered a few little close calls on that bridge, cars just slamming their brakes, or I don't know if you guys have seen those big old tumbleweeds there, just random stuff like that. And I don't know if you guys have also noticed how these past couple months, there's been also way more accidents. And from one person kind of said, he had a good notion of it. He said that, well, since the bridge is only one lane and it's so slow, people are always in a rush. So that's why there's been more accidents, because people are always rushing. And then, we've all been there when we're running late. We're stepping on the gas. We're not around aware of our surroundings. You're just telling them you're getting road rage, move out of the way. And it's like, dude, it's your fault. You're the one that's running late, not the person in front of you. But all these little situations you can put yourself in. I like maybe in school. I don't know. I know we've seen it in, movies and stuff like that, where the kid takes the long road because he doesn't want to get bullied. For us, it might be whatever, but for a kid out there, taking that long road for not being bullied or being picked on or something, for him, that's a struggle in his daily routine, his daily life. That's a struggle. There might be some other kids that, maybe they don't have any sorts of transportation and they got to walk a long distance to get to school. For them, that's a struggle, a worry. What if I don't make it to school in time, or what if I get lost? Those are little worries that us individually might have in our daily lives. So I want you guys to maybe picture a scenario and always think hopefully God can protect me and sustain me and, get rid of my fears. And then I want to get to, let's see. I know how many of us, I was talking about a little bit about fear, how we try to find a way to ask God to help us in our fears and stuff. But then also, I want to, change lanes, and I want to go to Matthew 5:9. And I'm just going to read it. It's going to say, blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Now how I was talking about the fear, right? How we sometimes put or sometimes are in just situations that we are fearful, regardless if it's at school, if it's at work, or any scenario. But like it says here with Matthew, blessed are the peacekeepers, for they will be called children of God. Now let's put ourselves in the opposite direction in the sense of we should be peacekeepers, as in sometimes we might not think, but sometimes like in school or maybe even at work, there's someone that's struggling with something. They're in their fear, and instead of us helping them, or instead of us being some sort of way supportive, or like especially if we're in the classroom and you see maybe a classmate that's maybe struggling with presenting his project or something like that, and let's, even though I know here in Matthew it's a little bit more directed towards more like bigger things, but like I said, we can know all of us have a different level of fears and worries, and how it says here, blessed are the peacemakers. So, we can make that person's day have peace, peacemakers in a sense of, if someone's at work and they're having struggle with figuring out something, let's be a peacemaker in a sense of like, let's help him so his day could be at peace. We're peacemakers. That's giving that person peace. We're making peace for him in a sense of like being there for him, helping him out. And then like the verse says, for they will be called children of God. And how my dad was mentioning earlier, how sometimes people notice stuff like that when you're helpful, when you're caring, and things like that. People notice that, and they people always say like, oh, that guy's a good person, or he's a good coworker, he's a good student. And that's a reflection of how in the future, maybe if you get to know more of the person, you can always let them know about your faith. And then that's when you can be considered children of God, because then he would know that, oh, the reason he's like this is because he's a children of God. And like I said, us dealing with our fears and worries, there's always a way to do it, was by, talking to God, asking him for help and things like that. But at the same time, we can also be that help for someone else, like us taking care of like our fears and worries with God, but at the same time also we can, like I said, peacemakers and help other people and be their peace. And I think that's also a very good thing, because then after let's say we triumph them through our fears and struggles, then we could be more helpful to other people. If they have any other issues, even if it's just like my dad was saying earlier, even just like a simple hug, or even just a simple, just hopefully you're having a good day. And, sometimes the simplest things, we don't know what people are going through, and they could always be very, very helpful. There's a quick little story there at work. There's this person that sometimes she comes over and she helps out with the people there and stuff like that from one of the temp agencies. And I interact with her. She's really outgoing girl and stuff like that. She's young. And she came over to the office and she was giving out some papers and stuff like that. And then she just started talking a little bit more like, oh, how's your weekend going and stuff like that. And then for some reason, I got on the topic about how, sometimes here, we're struggling with this and with that. And surprisingly, I didn't know, but she actually was struggling with like a suicide and stuff like that. And, you don't really picture it or anything when you just interact with them on a daily basis. But once you maybe talk to them a little bit more or open up, even just a little bit, because it wasn't even like me telling this big old backstory or nothing like that. It was nothing crazy, but it was just like, a topic popped up, and then, it just flew in with the conversation, and she mentioned that. And then at that moment, you don't really think like, wow, this person's, she's young, she's outgoing, she's doing all these things, and you don't really picture her going through anything like that. Unless you, in a way, ask, or just simple interactions, like I said, it wasn't even nothing big. And the reason why I think, to a certain extent, she felt kind of comfortable talking about it was because she was going already there she would go every week. And every time she would go, I would say, hi, how you doing? Simple conversation. And first things first is not being, not me, but everybody in general, not being like a weirdo, not being a creep. Especially, the way you present yourself too. Like let's say you could be going to church and everything, but like if you give yourself like a presentation, like, oh, that guy looks like he's having a bad day, instead of being more cheerful, like I always try to be cheerful at work, regardless of what's going on. If someone like, oh, they annoy me and stuff, I always try to be cheerful. Hey, how you doing? How's it going? Little stuff like that. Try not let things like that, get the better of us. And sometimes people see that, they see like, oh man, like you've been really busy. How you doing? Like, well, it's busy, but like, we're making it work. And they see that positivity and stuff. So it kind of, it leans them to be a little bit more open to you, build that trust, be a little bit more trustworthy with you. And like I said, it's nothing crazy, no crazy therapy or nothing like that. Like, it's just very simple stuff like that. But leaning back to what I was talking about her was just how, sometimes we don't know what people are going through. And just by simply being friendly and honest and being a peacemaker, not being at work causing trouble or stuff like that, just being a peacekeeper, making sure everyone's, treated equally with respect. People see that and they notice that, and then, they tend to lean towards having trust in you. And then, she opened up about that and, always try to help out people. But you could be, like I said, their peacemaker. And of course, at first we got to also help ourselves out with, and, talking to God and going through our struggles too as well. And then another verse that I also want to say is Jeremiah 46:16. I'm just gonna read it. It's a little different scenario because it's talking about when during the destruction of Jerusalem. But I think we can implement it in what I'm talking to you guys about right now. And it goes, they will stumble repeatedly. They will fall over each other. They will say, "Get up, let us go back to our own people and let our native lands away from the sword of the oppressor." And it says how sometimes we fall, here it's talking more about like during the destruction of Jerusalem and stuff like that, but like, condensing it down to like our own personal situations or daily routines, and how sometimes, we mess up in one way or another. Maybe even at work or even at school, maybe you said something that you shouldn't have, or at work, maybe you did something, that you shouldn't have. Maybe you turned off your coworker's computer so he could like lose. I don't know. That's just, you did something. Maybe when you're, I don't know, in the fields, maybe you tripped a person or something. Not just kidding. But you see or you hear, or even yourselves, you go through struggles and you fall and you stumble. But then, they will say, like I said, if you're going through that situation and if you have people around you that you surround yourself around you, they'll help you out. And vice versa, if you're that person that also helps out people, you can always, like it says here in the verse, and they will say, "Get up and let us go back to our own people and our native lands, away from the sword of the oppressor." And like I said, this is talking more about during the destruction of Jerusalem, but like condensing it to our own personal situation is how about let's get up and get through this day, and let's try to find a way to find a solution, make it better. And like I said, away from the sword of the oppressor. And we can kind of put it like away from, maybe if we are, I don't know, arguing with like a coworker about something, maybe instead of, continuing arguing, how about let's, away from the sword of the oppressor, maybe away from that, because it's going to lead you to arguing back, and then maybe you might cause drama at work or at school or something. So instead of, confronting it, sometimes it's better to just, God bless you, and then just, away from the sword of the oppressor. And then the other verse I want to say is, it's in Jeremiah 2:51-20. And I kind of want to finish up with this. It's crazy how time flies. I want to put all that, what I talked to you guys about, the whole thing about having fear, about being a peacemaker, all these attributes that we can kind of implement in our daily lives. I kind of want to finish off with this verse saying, Jeremiah 51:20, saying, "You are my war club, my weapon for battle. With you I shatter nations, with you I destroy kingdoms." And the way I want to implement this is kind of like with us, as in, you are my war club, as in a sense of, as a Christian, is we are in battle too, in a sense. it's a different scenario how it is here with Jeremiah, but we all have our daily battles, our daily struggles. And one way, like the way we phrase it, daily battle. Who is someone right now that we can think of right from our head that goes to battle? What's the typical type of person that goes to battle? Yeah, exactly. Soldiers, right? Soldiers are the people that are known commonly to go into battle. So we in a sense got to be, soldiers of God, soldiers of Christ. And it says, you are my war club, my weapon for battle. So I'm pretty sure a lot of people are going through different battles in their personal life, not just like us, but other people around yourselves. And like it says, you are my war club, as in a sense that, you are a person that's going to go help and defeat those battles from other people. Like I said, someone might be going through some insecurity of some sort, and they're battling through that. So you as a warrior, as a soldier of God, you can go help them confront that battle. If it's like some sort of insecurity, you can help comfort them, help them be comfort for them. And, it's not like a crazy, fighting sword to sword and stuff, because that's how people usually, picture, battles and wars and stuff like that, fighting with guns and things like that. But we're talking more about like spiritually, about our daily lives, our daily routines. And like I say, like he says here in the verse, war club, it's kind of like, how be the war club for that person, as in helping them confront their battle. And like I said, it could be an insecurity. It could be some struggle with maybe something at work or something. You be God's weapon in a sense of being a peacemaker and helping them be able to, find their peace, or help them battle to obtain their peace. But always being a tool of God, being a sense also a soldier, a warrior. When I always go to the base, I always see a bunch of it's a lot of training. So there's a lot of people that get yelled at and stuff like that, and it's kind of like part of the process. You're supposed to get yelled at. You're supposed to get, run through the mud. You're supposed to feel uncomfortable. You're supposed to go through all these things to prepare you to be a soldier. And I feel like us here at during our daily lives, we go through our struggles, we go through our pains, and but it's mainly just God helping us to mature ourselves, to be stronger, to be able to confront different situations. For example, let's say if someone in school is scared of doing a project, he asks for help, and God gives him the strength. He goes, presents his project. So now he's not as fearful to present anymore. Let's say after you graduate school, he needs to do a job interview. But now since, he's kind of done a few presentations already, he feels a little bit more confident to go into this job interview. Now he goes into this job interview and, he might be still worried, but since he already kind of defeated a little bit of that fear of, of public speaking or talking, he's able to maybe accomplish that interview, be successful, and now he gets the job. And let's say he's working in the job, and now he was able to interact one-on-one with the interviewer, so now he's able to interact one-on-one more with the coworkers and things like that. And let's say he gets promoted, but he's still, he had the kind of that fear of the presentation back in school, but now as being promoted, you get to give a presentation to all your coworkers. But since you were able to kind of defeat that in a sense back in school, it kind of leads up and helps you now in this part of your life. So you can kind of see how maybe some certain things that you might accomplish or get the fear over with, in the beginning it might seem very minor, like I said, in school. But as you progress, you kind of remember, and you kind of, it helped you at that moment. So you get better to when, as you get older and adult and stuff like that, you're able to, have the confidence of, improving yourself in your daily life. And then, because we're here, we come to church and everything, but we also have our daily lives that we go to work, and stuff like that. So it's always good to be mindful. And I just kind of want to conclude with, if you have a fear, the pain doesn't matter how big or how small you think it might be. It don't matter, because for God, He's always there for you, regardless of the type of fear you have. It could be as small as you think it could be, but for God, it's important to Him. It's important to Him. So in the beginning, if you have some sort of fear, reach out to God, and He will help you. And then if you've accomplished that peace, be a peacemaker for other people. If you see other people struggling or suffering in some sense, you be their peace and help them also be a peacemaker. And then in the end, be a soldier, be a warrior, in a sense of, continue going through these battles and also being a warrior, and fighting through the battles, and being as much as you could be in the eyes of God. And especially as youth, it's always very difficult nowadays, especially with everything that's going on. But I do believe that if we are we hang on to God and use Him as our substance of peace, and have Him give us the freedom, I think we could be pretty successful in our youth. And then as we get older with our careers, and then if God in the end gives us the opportunity to have families and stuff like that, all these lessons that you learn as when you're a kid, they will eventually do help as you get older. And I kind of want to conclude with that, and because it's already time. Time goes by quick. So I just want everybody to get up, and we'll do a quick little prayer. Yes, Father God, I want to thank you for this afternoon, for having us here, and to give us guidance, Lord, in your word with our lives, and help us to be better people. Help us to be peacemakers.